STARCHILD's top-secret UFO facility.
I was 13 years old when I built my first rocket, and it left the backyard at about 3,500 miles an hour. I was able to build it out of a construction machine shop that my father owned when he used to work for the mechanics and racing enterprises, and we had plenty of equipment and tools that allow such manufacturing to be done. As a matter of fact, our shop is very similar to a rocket shop in equipment and materials. The rockets kept getting bigger and faster till finally I was able to get funded by a federal grant by a congressman named John Ashbrook, and with that help I was able to go ahead and complete a larger rocket with an entirely new type of engine, which was a fusion containment engine. The two primary engines we use today are solid propellant and liquid propellant. There are about 61 different rocket engines of propulsion systems that you could leave this planet with. Two of them are just a solid and liquid fuel. I happen to just pick one out of the other 61 engines to pick from. I manufactured a magnetic fusion containment engine, which in simple essence is able to create a magnetic field capable of holding a thermal fusion reaction inside, like a chunk of the sun contained in a magnetic bottle. And when you tap that power, it allows you to have tremendous thrust, which is what makes the rocket go forward. And so imagine being able to tap onto the power of the sun for an acceleration factor. So that's a pretty interesting engine design. So once the engine was and the rocket was completed, we obviously couldn't launch it where I was launching smaller rockets, which were out in cow fields in Ohio. So we had to go to White Sands, New Mexico, and that was arranged by the congressman and a consultant at the time who was a retired general named Curtis LeMay. And Curtis LeMay made the arrangements from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. We rode down to White Sands on a C-141 Starlifter, and when my rocket myself got there, we started prepping it for a launch. At the time that we launched, which was June 20th, 1971, a plane flew in the same day we did, and out stepped these men in black suits with mirror sunglasses, and they're DOD agents. And so DOD was interested in the operation, and they were alerted to it by the Air Force and probably the Congress and whoever else was funding the program. Among those men, there were some NASA officials there that I recognized. They instructed me to send a rocket down 656 miles northwest of there to a precise set of coordinates that they gave me. And I asked them, why are we landing in a dry lake bed in Nevada? And they said, just drop it there. And I said, I can do that. So we fired the rocket, and it was a really success as far as engines go. Extremely fast. It was so fast you couldn't even see it leave. It's like, you ever try to watch a rifle bullet leave a barrel? That's how fast this engine was. So we landed we were exactly where they wanted it. Then we had to get on a DC-9 from White Sands and leave for the dry lake bed, which is called Groom Lake in Nevada. And I was asking them, do y'all notice that these wheels on your plane, they're rubber tires and landing gears, we want to bore more up to our belly in the dirt out there. So they said, don't worry about it. So we got on the plane, and when we got there, they were right. There were twin 10,000-foot runways there and hangars and a 42,000-acre Air Force base called Groom Lake. And it wasn't on any of the maps I was working with at the time. So my rocket was down on the south end of the field at the end of the runways, and you could see the parachutes bellowing in the wind, and we landed and got out. And I was assuming we were going to go look at my rocket right then. No, we got in golf carts and rode to the center hangar, which was a very low, flat type hangar, but extremely large inside, size of about 4 football fields. So we pull in there and stop in these little golf carts, and we're just sitting there, and I'm going, well, that hangar's empty. I thought, this is interesting, you know. And then in a few minutes, little yellow and red lights came on flashing, and Then out of the ground, or out of the floor, come these little rails with chains on them. They came up around all the doorways, and then the entire floor dropped out from under us. It's an elevator. We went down about 20 stories, and what was interesting about this elevator is normally you have chains that drops these things. Huge worm screws were lowering the platform down, which allows it to carry extreme weight. When we got down there, there was a lot of various aircraft and workshops and offices and such. That was off of the main bay, and then off of the main bay were smaller but still rather large work bays. And in the work bays, we went down to one that had something sitting in one of the big workshops. So we went and they opened the doors, we went inside, and the room was lit up like if you ever seen a car sitting in a paint booth. You have horizontal lights running the whole length of the room, and they arc like a rainbow all the way over. The reason being, like in a paint booth, it casts no shadows. So if you're spraying a car, if you see a run and your shadow's hiding it, you'll put a run in the car. So this was the same reason. It's a good laboratory to do it that way. That means that it's casting those shadows, so whatever you're working on, you can see it without being interfering with the light. And that was the first thing that's different about the room. They pulled the big covers off this thing, and it was interesting. It's an engine that's about the size of a school bus. And this engine is a pretty much a much larger version of the thing I built. It's also an electric magnetic fusion containment engine, but it is sophisticated and it is powerful. I would have to compare mine to it. Would be like I had a Model A and this thing was a Ferrari. I mean, it's just tremendous, powerful difference, but we both were of the same engine breed. And this one had been damaged right in the center of the core. In the type of configurations we build, we have dual particle accelerators that cause the fusion reaction. Right in the center of these accelerators is an area that I call the eye of the hurricane, and it's like an infinity pattern, figure 8, and right in the center, it's quiet there on a matter of conversion area. So then this particular engine was a hole there about 4 feet in diameter, and that was the first thing I noticed. They asked me to look at it and describe to them how I thought the thing functioned. And I asked them, you know, how come I'm telling you about your engine? And they said that the engine was recovered in a project they was working with, and they wasn't sure how everything functioned on it, and personnel that were available to work on that was not available anymore. And they said if I could just help them out a little bit. Well, being 17 years old at the time, they thought I didn't pick up on too many adult innuendos, but I guess I was born old. I knew exactly what they were doing. So I said, fine, you know, yeah, I'll be glad to help my country, you know. So we play along, and I asked them, can I walk up to it? They said, sure, as a matter of fact, you can climb on it if you want. So I got up to the engine, and then something really unusual about the engine, other than the design, the alloys itself, just the sheen and color, looked like iridescent color, like when you hold a CD disc to the sun and you see the rainbow. Imagine those kind of colors covering this entire engine and glowing like that. It's really pretty. The color of the engine was unlike any metal or alloy I was ever familiar with, and when I walked to the engine, there was a shadow on the engine. Now, I just told you that the rooms were built where you couldn't have shadows. When I stuck my arm out to it, there was a shadow on the engine, but right on the table there was no shadow. So it's not a light casting the shadow on the engine. The engine is picking up radiation off my body. So I back away from it, the shadow dissipates. When I bulk back up, it's back on. And so when I put my hands on the engine to pull myself up on it, that's where it's interesting, because the alloys in some places were so thin it was translucent. You could see through it like a sheet of amber. So when I laid my hands on it,